My name is Selene Marlowe. I am 25 years old, a finance student in New York City. On paper, that sounds like the beginning of a bright story, doesn't it? Dreams, ambition, the city lights stretching out like promises. But the truth? My story never began with light. It began with shadows. It began in a house where silence was louder than laughter, where smiles were rehearsed and fear lived in the corners of every room. My family looked perfect from the outside. People used to tell me, "You're lucky, Selene. Your father is so successful, your home so grand." I would nod, pretend to agree. But deep down, I wanted to scream, "If only you knew." My father, Cassian Marlowe, a man who wore fine suits and spoke with authority. To the world, he was charming, respectable. To us, he was something else. He carried secrets like weapons, and the sharpest one of all was his addiction, gambling. Cards, dice, roulette wheels, it didn't matter. He bet on anything that could spin, flip, or fall. My mother, Isolde, was different. She used to have dreams too. I remember her humming by the window when I was a child. Now her songs are gone. She has spent years swallowing her pain, smiling through clenched teeth, patching holes that kept tearing wider. Then there is my grandmother Agatha. She is stern, traditional, the kind of woman who commands a room without raising her voice. She believes in justice, in right and wrong, though she has spent years pretending not to see what my father really is. And my Aunt Drusilla, my mother's sister, a lawyer, sharp and unafraid. She is the only one in this family who dares to look Cassian in the eyes without blinking. I always admired her, because I could never do that myself. Not back then. For most of my life, I tried to escape through study. Finance was my fortress. Numbers were pure. Equations were honest. If you add, you get a sum. If you divide, you see the truth. Numbers do not lie. People do. I worked every shift I could, stacked every dollar, saved every scholarship grant. All of it went into one place, my education fund, $42,000. That number meant freedom. It meant I could finish my degree. It meant I could leave. But one evening, everything shattered. I remember it clearly. I sat at my desk, logged into the account. I expected comfort, a reminder that my dreams were still safe, waiting. Instead, the screen flickered and the number appeared. Not 42,000, not even 4,000. Zero. Just like that. Empty. Gone. At first, I thought it was a mistake, some technical error. I refreshed the page over and over until my hands shook. But the truth did not change. The money was gone. All of it, I felt my chest tighten as if the air had been stolen from my lungs. My whole body went cold. I wanted to scream, but no sound came. I pressed my palms against my face, hoping if I closed my eyes, the nightmare would vanish. But when I opened them, it was still there, a hollow zero staring back at me like a cruel joke. That night, I couldn't sleep. I paced my room, my mind racing. Where had it gone? Who could have touched it? There was only one answer. One man in this house capable of such theft. My father, I did not want to believe it, but in my bones, I already knew. Still, I needed proof. I needed to see it with my own eyes, so I followed him. I waited until dusk, when he said he was heading to a late meeting. I trailed him through the streets, my heart pounding so loud I thought it would betray me. I kept my distance, watching, and then I saw it. The neon lights, the smoke-filled entrance, the sound of slot machines and laughter spilling into the night. The casino. My father walked out the door, adjusting his cufflinks as if nothing was wrong. His face flushed, his smile slick with arrogance. He held a receipt in his hand, folded and stuffed into his pocket. Money, my money. I froze in the shadows, gripping the strap of my bag until my nails cut into my skin. Every ounce of doubt disappeared. The truth was no longer hidden. It was standing right in front of me, smirking under the streetlights. I wanted to run to him, to scream, "How could you? How could you take everything from me?" But I didn't move, not a single step. Because in that moment, something inside me broke, and something else began to grow in its place. It was not sadness, not fear. It was fire. It was rage. I whispered to myself under the night air, "You stole from me, Father. You didn't just take money. You took my future, my freedom, my life." And as he walked away into the night, I stayed behind, trembling but unshaken, and I made a vow. From that moment forward, Cassian Marlowe would no longer be my father. He would be my enemy, and I would make him pay, because I knew with absolute certainty he had no idea what was coming. The image of him stepping out of that casino kept replaying in my mind, over and over, like a cruel loop I could not escape. The bright neon lights painted his face, the stench of smoke and whiskey clung to his suit, and in that instant, I knew. It wasn't a mistake. He had stolen it. The 42,000, my future, my freedom. That night, I locked myself in my room. The door clicked shut behind me, but it did nothing to silence the storm inside. I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at my laptop screen. The numbers still mocked me, zeros where there should have been life, hope, possibility. My hands trembled as I touched the glass. I broke. My breath came ragged. Tears blurred the light until the whole world looked drowned. I pressed my palms to my eyes, as if I could erase it all. But nothing stopped the truth from sinking deeper, burning me raw. I whispered into the darkness, my voice breaking. "Why, Dad? Why would you do this to me?" There was no answer, only silence, thick and suffocating. I slid down to the floor, knees pulled to my chest, my forehead resting on them like a child. I cried until my body ached, until my throat felt like sandpaper, until there was nothing left. The hours stretched. The city outside still moved, but my world was frozen. I pressed my face against the cold glass of the window. The skyline glittered in the distance, indifferent, untouchable. Somewhere down there, people were chasing their dreams. And I was left with nothing but betrayal. But then, something shifted. In the stillness of that endless night, the tears stopped. My chest still hurt, but the ache was changing. It was no longer soft, no longer hollow. It sharpened, hardened. I looked at my reflection in the dark glass. My eyes were swollen, yes, red, tired. But beneath it, there was something else. A spark, a glimmer of steel. "He thinks I'll stay quiet," I whispered. The sound startled me. It didn't sound like grief anymore. It sounded like fire. "He thinks I'll bow my head, as if I'm still a child." I leaned closer to the window, breathing against the glass until the fog of my breath covered my reflection. Then I traced a line through it with my finger. A blade. A promise. "No," I said softly. "You just taught me how to turn pain into a weapon." The next morning, I found him in the kitchen. He was reading the paper, as if nothing in the world had shifted, as if he hadn't ripped apart his daughter's future the night before. The smell of burnt coffee filled the air. My voice trembled, but I forced the words out. "Where is it, Dad?" "My fund. $42,000. It's gone." He didn't even look surprised. Slowly, he folded the paper and set it aside. Then he lifted his gaze to me, his expression calm. Too calm. "You think you own anything here?" he said, his voice low, steady, like ice cracking underfoot. I swallowed but stood my ground. That was my education fund, mine. His lips curled into something between a smile and a sneer. He rose from his chair, closing the distance between us. I could smell the faint trace of whiskey on his breath. You live because of me. You eat because of me. Don't ever forget that, Selene. His words cut like a blade, each syllable dipped in venom. Without me, you're nothing. Something in me snapped. My fingers curled into fists at my sides, nails digging into my palms until I felt pain, but I didn't flinch. I didn't step back. He tilted his head, almost amused. Don't ask me questions you're not ready to hear the answers to. I stared at him, my throat burning with all the things I wanted to scream. But I didn't scream. I didn't cry. Instead, I let the silence answer for me. My eyes locked with his, cold, unwavering. For the first time, he looked unsettled, just for a flicker, but I saw it, a twitch in his jaw, a shadow in his eyes. He turned away, muttering curses under his breath, trying to dismiss me as if I were nothing more than a stubborn child. But I stood frozen in that kitchen, my heart hammering, my body trembling, not from fear, but from rage. The kind of rage that doesn't fade, the kind that doesn't forgive. That night, I opened my journal. The ink smeared as I wrote, my hand moving faster than my thoughts. He took my money, he took my trust, but he will not take my future. He will regret every tear, every word, every moment he thought I was powerless. I stared at the words until they blurred. My tears didn't fall this time. Instead, a strange calm spread through me, like standing in the eye of a storm. The Selene who wept on the floor was gone. The Selene who begged for answers was gone. In her place was someone else, someone who had nothing left to lose. And a person with nothing left to lose is the most dangerous of all. Cassian Marlowe had stolen my future, but he didn't realize. He had just created his own reckoning. The days that followed felt different. I carried the same books, walked the same hallways, ate at the same kitchen table, but inside, something had shifted. My father thought he had broken me. He thought fear would keep me in line, but fear had turned into something else. I began to prepare, quietly, carefully, like a shadow. The first thing I did was log into the bank account at night, when everyone was asleep. The numbers no longer shocked me. The emptiness no longer stung. Instead, I studied. Every transaction, every withdrawal, every detail. I printed the statements, slid them into a folder beneath my bed. Each page I saved felt heavy in my hands. Another cut, I whispered to myself. Another scar he cannot erase. I moved slowly, patiently. Each evening after dinner, while he sipped whiskey in the living room, I retreated to my room with excuses of homework. And in that silence, I became my own detective. Old receipts, hidden notices. I searched the drawers he forgot to lock, the back pocket of jackets he threw carelessly on the chair, even the trash. I collected scraps that told a story he thought he had buried. One night, I found a crumpled envelope behind the television, the logo of the casino stamped on the corner. Inside, a notice of overdue debt, his name scrawled in bold. I held it in my hands, the paper trembling with my breath. This wasn't just suspicion anymore. This was truth. Got you, I murmured, tucking it away with the others. Every document I gathered became a weapon. Every hidden proof a silent bullet waiting in the chamber. I was no longer just his daughter. I was his shadow, recording the empire of lies he built brick by brick. But it wasn't enough. Paper could be denied. Numbers could be argued. I needed something undeniable, something that would pierce through his arrogance. So I waited. The opportunity came faster than I expected. He met with a man outside our home, late in the evening. I watched from my window. The figure handed him an envelope. My father's shoulders hunched, his head lowered. He counted the bills quickly, slid them into his coat. I reached for my phone, hands shaking, but steady enough to record. Through the thin curtain, I caught every second. The exchange, the whisper, the smile of relief on his face as he clutched that dirty envelope like oxygen. I pressed stop. My reflection stared back at me on the dark screen. Eyes wide, lips trembling. I had it. Not numbers, not paper, but proof that breathed and moved. Back in my room, I replayed it. The faint crackle of voices, the unmistakable sight of his hand receiving money. I saved the file in 3 different places. A copy on my laptop, another on a flash drive, one hidden in the cloud. "Try erasing this, Dad," I whispered. "Erase me if you can." But I wasn't reckless. I knew rage could burn too fast, and I needed it to last. So I kept building. I studied laws in the library between classes, laws about student funds, rights that protected education, clauses he must have ignored, thinking I was too naive to understand. I highlighted passages in thick yellow, my fingers tracing over words like fraud and embezzlement. Each word became a new language to me, a language of justice, a language of war. Night after night, I whispered the same mantra to myself, sliding new documents into the folder. Every page is a blade, every proof is a bullet. I only have to wait for the day I pull the trigger. But silence has its own cost. Pretending nothing was wrong around him became its own performance. At breakfast, when he poured his coffee, I smiled. When he asked about classes, I nodded. He didn't notice the way my gaze lingered too long. He didn't notice how tightly I gripped my fork, how my teeth pressed into my tongue to stop myself from spitting the truth. Once he caught me looking. His eyes narrowed. "What are you staring at, Selene?" I forced a smile. "Nothing. Just tired." He grunted, dismissed me. But inside, my hands were trembling under the table, not from fear, from holding back the urge to let him know that every day I was sharpening my knives behind closed doors. My grandmother Agatha noticed the change. One evening, she touched my arm gently. "You've grown so quiet, my dear," she whispered. I met her eyes, but I couldn't tell her, not yet. Secrets weigh heavy, but silence protects. So I only squeezed her hand and said softly, "Sometimes silence is the loudest thing we can hold." She studied me, her brow furrowed, but she didn't press. Maybe she saw it. Maybe she already knew. And so the days went on. I lived one life under the sun, the dutiful daughter, the quiet student, and another in the shadows, the hunter gathering her weapons, until one night I looked at the folder, thick now, bursting with evidence, receipts, notices, statements, photographs, video, proof that could dismantle him piece by piece. I ran my hand along the edge of the papers, the sharp corners grazing my skin, and I whispered into the darkness of my room. "You built this grave with your own hands, Father. I'm just holding the shovel." I used to believe survival meant silence, that if I stayed quiet, if I endured, the storm would pass. But storms do not pass when men like Cassian create them. They grow darker, heavier, until they swallow everything. That night, when I opened my heart to Agatha, something shifted. Her knitting slipped from her hands the moment she heard the truth. The debt, the forged signatures, the stolen funds, and the video, his hand extended, taking money in the shadows of the gambling den. She stared at me as though the ground had broken beneath her. But instead of collapsing, she stood taller. "Enough," she whispered at first, her voice trembling. Then louder, firmer. Enough! He will answer for this. Her words were not just comfort. They were a beginning. We moved to the study where the fire burned low. Papers lay across the table. My folder of evidence, receipts, copies of letters. Agatha studied each one with the precision of a general reading a map. At last, she said, "We must plan. If we move blindly, he will crush you. But if we strike together, if every piece falls at once, he will fall." That was the first moment I realized we were not just surviving anymore. We were preparing for war. Soon after, I brought the evidence to Aunt Drusilla. Her office smelled of ink and old leather, and her desk was littered with case files. When she saw what I carried, she pushed everything aside. Her eyes devoured the documents, page after page, receipt after receipt, and when she finished, she leaned back slowly, folding her hands. "This is not simply theft," she said. "It is fraud. It is extortion. It is a case that could end his career and more." I nodded, my pulse quickening. "What do we do?" She leaned forward, her voice low. "First, a letter. A demand for restitution. It will shake him, force him to reveal his defenses. He will deny it, of course, and when he does, we will already have the lawsuit prepared. That way, he has no time to destroy evidence." Her pen scratched across the page as she spoke. "Second, we must secure the documents in multiple places. Originals hidden, copies encrypted. You must trust no one but us." I felt a shiver as she listed each step, like pieces of a trap clicking into place. Then her eyes lifted to mine. "And third, you must be ready for him to strike back. He will not surrender quietly. He will threaten you, perhaps worse. Are you prepared for that?" I hesitated, my breath caught in my throat, but then I remembered his voice in the hallway. "Me song du glenyo tau, dung bao jo quin du da," and I whispered, "Yes, let him come." Drusilla's eyes narrowed, a faint smile curving her lips. "Then we move." But the most unexpected ally was my mother, Isolde. For years, she had walked like a ghost in her own home. Soft footsteps, lowered eyes, words left unsaid. I thought silence was all she had left. But silence, I learned, can also be the sound of gathering strength. I found her in her room one evening, bent over a stack of papers. She flinched when I entered, then sighed, as though she no longer had the energy to pretend. On the bed were marriage certificates, property deeds, account statements, every trace of the life she had shared with Cassian, now turned into weapons. "Mother," I whispered, my voice breaking. "You've been preparing?" Her hands trembled as she placed one document aside. "I had to," she murmured. "He has taken too much. He will not take you as well. I will leave him, and I will testify if it comes to that." Her eyes met mine, fragile, but filled with a courage I had never seen before. It was then I realized she had not been defeated. She had been waiting, watching, collecting the proof that would one day set her free. That night, we gathered, all four of us, beneath the dim light of the sitting room. The fire crackled, the shadows long. Agatha spread the documents across the table like a commander arranging soldiers. Drusilla outlined the timeline of the case. Isolde spoke softly of the accounts she had uncovered, the names of creditors, the hidden payments Cassian thought no one noticed, and I listened, heart pounding, as the plan formed before us. First, preserve the evidence in secrecy. Agatha would hide the originals in the old cellar beneath her house, untouched, unknown to Cassian. Second, Drusilla would prepare the legal assault. Letters drafted, lawsuits structured, all in silence until the right moment. Third, Isolde would continue gathering from the inside, every whisper of debt, every transfer, every late-night call. She would bring it all to us. And me, I would be the spark, the one to confront him when the time was right. The voice he thought too weak to rise against him. The firelight flickered across Agatha's stern face as she leaned on her cane. Her voice carried the weight of every scar he had left upon us. We face Cassian as one. He thinks himself untouchable, but he has underestimated what it means to betray his own blood. She looked at each of us in turn, Drusilla with her steel, Isolde with her quiet resolve, and me with my fury. Then she said the words that sealed our covenant. We will bring him down, and he will pay. The room fell silent. Only the fire answered, spitting sparks into the air. And in that silence, I felt something awaken inside me. No longer fear, no longer doubt, but certainty. The certainty that Cassian's empire of cruelty would crumble, and that it would be by our hands. Suspicion is not loud at first. It is a shadow under the door, a breath against the glass. You feel it before it speaks, and when it finally does, it is already too late. Cassian's suspicion grew like mold in the dark, invisible at first, then spreading, until every corner of the house reeked of it. It began with the little things. The keys on the table moved an inch. The wardrobe door left slightly ajar. A book on my desk opened to a page I had not touched. I told myself I imagined it, that I was becoming paranoid, but deep down, I knew. One night, I came back to my room and found the floorboard, the one I had thought safe, already shifted, pulled halfway from its place. My blood turned cold. He had been here. He was searching. I stood in the doorway for what felt like an hour, the silence heavy pressing into my chest. Everything I had hidden, he could have found it. The receipts, the copies of debts, the memory card with his voice. But the gods, or luck, kept me safe for one more night. He had not yet uncovered the heart of my plan. At dinner the next evening, his tone was different. He cut his meat with slow, deliberate strokes, and without looking at me, he muttered, "You think I don't notice. The whispers, the secrets. Everything in this house belongs to me. Don't forget that." The words were casual, almost soft, but they sank into me like iron hooks. I kept my eyes down, pushing food around my plate. But inside, my pulse was a hammer. He was circling closer, and if I faltered, everything would collapse. The walls grew tighter in the days that followed. He began prowling the halls at night, opening doors, snapping them shut. I lay awake, my heart racing with every sound, every creak of the wood. And then he turned his gaze to my mother. I found her one morning, standing at the sink with her hands trembling. She did not hear me at first until I stepped closer. Tears clung to her lashes. "He said, we should be grateful," she whispered. "He said if we disobey, he can throw us out with nothing. Do you understand, Selene? Nothing." Her voice cracked. I held her hand, cold, shaking, and something inside me hardened. Later, I heard him myself, his voice ablade, pressed against her spirit. "Don't forget who feeds you. Don't forget who keeps a roof over your head." She flinched when I appeared, and he only smirked before walking away. That smirk, as if he relished the fear he left behind. But it wasn't enough. He wanted me next. I was in the hallway when he cornered me. His shadow blocked the light, stretching long and monstrous against the wall. His eyes burned, not with control, but with desperation. "All this money is mine," he roared. "Every coin, every stone of this house. Mine. Even you are mine." The words shook the air. For a heartbeat, I could not breathe. I felt the weight of them crush against me, as if he was hammering the chains into my skin. But deep down, beneath the fear, another voice stirred. No, I am not yours. I never was. The house grew quieter after that. Quieter, but not calmer. It was the silence of a predator waiting for the right strike. And the strike came. One evening, I crept past the study. The door was open just enough, the glow of the lamp spilling into the hallway. I froze when I heard his voice. Rough, strained, desperate. I'll sell it. The house. It's worth enough to cover most of the debt. The rest, I'll find a way. I pressed my back to the wall, my breath caught in my throat. Sell the house. The words rang like a death sentence. Our shelter, our sanctuary, the walls that had held my mother's tears, my daughter's laughter, my own fragile plans. He would tear it all apart for his greed. My vision blurred as I stumbled back to my room. The edges of the world swam. If the house was gone, we would have nothing. Nowhere to hide, no ground to stand on. That night, I did not sleep. The clock ticked and ticked, each second louder than the last. My eyes traced the cracks in the ceiling, the shadows that stretched and twisted above me. I thought of Agatha's steady gaze, Drusilla's quiet strength, my mother's hands trembling at the sink, my daughter's laughter, too rare these days, and I realized this was no longer just my fight. It was theirs. If he sold the house, he would break them all. I sat up, the decision blooming in my chest like fire. There was no more time to wait, no more hope that he might undo himself. He was moving too quickly, too recklessly. I whispered into the dark, to the walls, to the air, to the ghosts of everything we had lost. No more running, no more hiding. This ends. I opened the drawer and touched the documents I had hidden. The receipts, the signatures, the debts, the video of his hands accepting bribes, his voice bargaining in the shadows. Each piece was a weapon, each page a blade, and I was done waiting. He thought the house was his. He thought my silence was his. He thought my life was his. But he had miscalculated. I was not the frightened child he believed I was. I was the hand holding the final card, and I was ready to play it. The last hand. The final game. The moment when his kingdom of lies would fall stone by stone under the weight of truth. And when it came, there would be no escape. The night at Agatha's house felt heavier than any storm. The lamps burned low, shadows stretching across the walls. We gathered around the long oak table, the air tense, brittle, like glass ready to shatter. Agatha sat at the head, her posture rigid, hands clasped in her lap. Drusilla adjusted her glasses, folders neatly stacked by her side. My mother Isolde was silent, eyes downcast, fingers trembling against the edge of her scarf. And I waited, the weight of everything I carried pressed against my ribs. Tonight, there would be no retreat. The clock struck, but Cassian did not come. Minutes bled into an hour. The silence was suffocating, broken only by the ticking of the clock and the sound of my daughter shifting restlessly in the next room. Finally, the door swung open. He stumbled inside, reeking of whiskey, his smile twisted. Cassian late, disheveled, eyes gleaming with the reckless arrogance of a man who believed himself untouchable. "Well," he slurred, pulling out a chair with a scrape that clawed through the silence. "What's this? Some kind of family council? Or a funeral without a coffin?" He laughed, a dry, broken sound that made my skin crawl. No one answered. Agatha's eyes narrowed, cold steel. But I spoke first. My voice was calm, measured, sharp enough to cut the air. "Yes, a funeral, but not for us." He froze for a fraction of a second, then sneered. "Big words, girl. Do you think you frighten me?" I slid the folder across the table. The papers fanned open like wings. receipts, debts, signed agreements, proof of every shadow he had hidden in. He leaned forward, eyes darting over the pages, a flicker of recognition, and then rage. "You don't even know what this means," he spat. "You think paper makes you powerful?" I leaned closer. The lamplight caught the edge of my jaw as I whispered, clear enough for everyone to hear. $42,000. The number struck the room like thunder. His hand twitched. Agatha gasped. Drusilla lifted her pen, and my mother's lips parted in silent shock. I did not stop. $42,000 in debts, signed by your hand, hidden from your family. You didn't just gamble with money, Father. You gambled with me, and you lost. My voice did not tremble. It rang, firm, final, like the tolling of a bell. He slammed his fist onto the table. The glasses rattled. The papers jumped. My mother flinched, tears brimming at the corners of her eyes. "You ungrateful wretch!" he roared. "You dare speak to me this way? I fed you, clothed you, gave you everything." I pushed back my chair, standing, my eyes locked on his, unblinking. "You gave me nothing but chains, and tonight I break them." The fury in his eyes burned wild. He lunged forward, his hand raised. The room held its breath. Crack! Agatha's palm struck his face. The sound echoed like a gunshot. Cassian staggered back, stunned, a red mark blooming across his cheek. Agatha's voice cut sharper than steel. "I no longer recognize you as my son." The room fell silent. Only Cassian's ragged breathing filled the air. His lips parted, but no words came. He looked at her as though the world itself had betrayed him, but the world had simply seen his true face. And then, my mother moved. For the first time that night, she raised her head. Her hands no longer trembled. From her bag, she pulled a single document, the divorce papers. She laid them on the table, her fingers steady, her voice calm but cold. I was silent for too long, but not anymore. She picked up the pen. Her signature bloomed across the page, dark and permanent. The sound of the pen scratching against the paper was louder than any scream. When it was done, she pushed the document forward. "I am no longer your wife." Cassian's face twisted. Anger, disbelief, desperation. He looked around at the table, searching for someone, anyone to take his side, but no one moved. Agatha's gaze was iron. Drusilla's pen was poised, ready to strike the law into him. And I stood tall, the evidence between us like a shield. He was alone. For the first time in his life, truly alone. His breath faltered. His shoulders sank. The whiskey in his veins could not save him from the truth that wrapped around his throat. This was not his house anymore, not his family, not his power. The game had ended, and he had lost. I remember the morning when the letter was finally sent. Drusilla sat at her desk, her pen steady as if she were carving into stone. She did not tremble. She did not hesitate. Every word on that page was deliberate, a blade sharpened for years. I watched the envelope sealed, stamped, and taken away. A single piece of paper, yet it carried the weight of justice. For me, for my mother, for everything Cassian thought he could bury under silence. I told myself to breathe, because once the letter left her hands, there was no turning back. He received it 2 days later, delivered straight to his door in full view of the neighbors. No one offered him the courtesy of privacy. No one shielded him from the whispers that rose like smoke around him. They had seen too much. They had heard too many stories. And now, with that letter in his trembling hands, the truth was undeniable. I imagine his face as he tore the envelope open. The flash of arrogance first. The certainty that nothing could touch him. Then, the pause. The tightening jaw. the widening eyes as he read line after line, the demand for compensation, the warning of legal action, the quiet but merciless promise that his empire of lies had collapsed. He had always thought the world would stand beside him. Friends, colleagues, drinking partners who once raised glasses in his honor. But when the letter reached them too, when whispers became headlines, they turned away, one by one, step by step, until he stood alone. I heard about it from Agatha first, how at the local tavern he pushed open the door, expecting his usual table, and found only silence. No one raised a glass. No one offered a chair. He forced a laugh. "Cowards, all of you." But his voice cracked, and when no one answered, he left in shame. The house that once echoed with his boasts became hollow, walls stripped bare, photographs pulled down. Even the air felt abandoned, heavy with dust and regret. He sat in the half-light, surrounded by papers piled high like tombstones. Bills, legal notices, debts he could never outrun. I picture his hands, once so quick to point and command, now trembling as he lifted page after page. Numbers he could not erase, deadlines he could not ignore. The empire of Cassian Marlowe, reduced to ink and paper. Sometimes I wonder if he heard our voices in the silence. My mother's quiet defiance, my aunt's sharp resolve, my own accusations echoing still, because silence can be cruel. And in that empty house, silence must have been deafening. He tried to hold on. He clutched a bottle at night as if drowning in it would save him. But even the liquor turned bitter. Even the shadows mocked him. And still, each month, he sat at his desk, a blank check before him, his pen scraping across the paper like a confession. The first time, I imagine he resisted, jaw clenched, sweat on his brow, but he signed, because the law had teeth, because Drusilla gave him no escape. He signed, and he mailed it, the first of many. Voice breaks. Every month, I whisper, he sends me a check. Every month, he remembers. Every month, he feels the weight of that betrayal all over again. And I know, deep in his chest with each signature, he is not just paying me. He is carving his own sentence. He is branding himself with the truth he can never erase. There is no applause in this ending, no triumphal music, only the slow unraveling of a man who thought he owned us, a man who gambled with our lives and lost. Now he sits alone. No laughter, no allies, only silence. Only the rustle of papers that remind him, day after day, that Selene Marlowe did not break. And when I open each envelope, when I hold each check in my hand, I feel no joy, no relief, only the quiet certainty that justice, though late, though imperfect, has a face. And that face is his. Every month he sends me a check. Every month he signs his name. And every month he reminds himself, to betray Selene Marlowe is to sign your own death warrant. The morning was thick with anticipation. Even before I left my apartment, the city seemed different. Every street corner, every familiar brick, every leaf trembling in the wind whispered farewell. I packed slowly, deliberately, as if touching the walls, the furniture, the remnants of a life I had endured would somehow imprint my triumph into them. Each item I placed into my suitcase was a reminder. Books I had studied from, notes I had written in the quiet of sleepless nights, photographs of small victories. I folded them gently, like fragile evidence of survival. Agatha was there. Her eyes were warm yet sharp, assessing me. measuring the woman I had become. "You've grown into what he never thought you could be," she said softly. I nodded. "Because I had no choice," I whispered, "and I would not fail again." Drusilla came with a stack of documents, a subtle smile, a nod. "You've done everything right," she said, voice steady, full of certainty. I tucked the papers into my bag, not for proof to anyone else, but for myself. A reminder that I had dismantled the chains he had built around me. The graduation ceremony itself was a blur of gowns and applause. The sound of hundreds of voices cheered for futures I had fought for. I walked in line, my steps deliberate, my hands clenching the edge of my robe. I felt the eyes of the crowd, but none of them could touch me. I had survived worse scrutiny. I had faced the man who thought he owned my life, and I had won. When my name was called, Selene Marlowe, I stepped forward with a calm that surprised even me. Each footfall on the stage echoed like a heartbeat, steady, unyielding. I accepted my diploma with hands that did not shake, though the weight of years pressed against my chest. I looked out at my mother, her hands pressed together, tears in her eyes. Agatha nodded faintly, a silent affirmation. Drusilla's gaze was unwavering, and I knew in that moment that the world I was leaving behind had no hold on me. Packing for London was more than logistics. It was ritual. I checked every zipper, every strap. Each item I carried symbolized a fragment of my autonomy reclaimed. The apartment, the streets, even the distant rumble of traffic became a backdrop to my departure. I allowed myself a brief moment to look around, breathe in the city I had survived, and smile. The airport was alive with sound. Rolling suitcases, distant announcements, voices overlapping in dozens of languages. And yet, in that noise, I felt clarity. I moved through the terminal, my suitcase trailing behind like a shadow I had finally tamed. Light streamed through the massive glass walls, illuminating my face. I let it fall on me, unafraid, unashamed. Every sunbeam seemed to mark a step further from the girl he tried to destroy, and a step closer to the woman I had become. Then I saw him, Cassian. He stood across the terminal, barely noticeable to anyone else, yet, to me, unmistakable. Older, haggard, the arrogance he once wore like armor stripped away, leaving only a man diminished by his own failures. His eyes locked on me. I could see it all in that look. Hate, disbelief, the faintest trace of helplessness. He could not move closer. He could not stop me. He had lost everything that once mattered: control, pride, influence, and he knew it. I did not flinch. I did not break my gaze. Instead, I allowed a faint, knowing smile to touch my lips, one that spoke of survival, justice, and the irrevocable truth. He could never own me. I walked forward, step by step, suitcase rolling behind me, echoing on the polished floor. Every stride was deliberate, full of intention. I felt the weight of my past fall away with each motion. The sunlight streaming through the glass walls caught my eyes, warming me, affirming me. I was leaving fear behind. I was leaving resentment behind. I was leaving Cassian behind. Voice-over softens, reflective yet firm. Cassian Marlowe thought he could bind me with money. He thought the debts he accrued, the lies he lived, would keep me under his control. But when he took what he believed was mine, he did not destroy me. He freed me instead. I am no longer his victim. I am no longer the child he tried to bury beneath his failures. I am the verdict. I am the sentence. I am the reckoning. And I have won. The gates opened. I passed through with steady steps. The sunlight embraced me fully. Not harsh, not blinding, but illuminating every line of determination in my face. Behind me, Cassian's figure blurred in the distance, powerless, reduced, haunted by the life he could never touch again. I did not look back. I did not need to, because freedom, real, unshakable freedom, had become my own. The terminal buzzed around me, strangers brushing past, announcements fading in and out. I could hear nothing but my heartbeat and the echo of my triumph. A life once stolen had been reclaimed. A future once threatened had been seized. And as the plane waited, engines humming in the distance, I rolled my suitcase forward, toward London, toward opportunity, toward a life I had earned with every scar, every sleepless night, every choice I refused to let him control. For the first time, I breathed fully. The girl who had been trapped no longer existed. Selene Marlowe walked forward into the light, and behind her, the shadows of Cassian Marlowe faded into nothing.